Why are you fine?
My husband brought home some tea, and my mother-in-law was rushed to the hospital after drinking it. Even after I contacted my husband, he didn't seem surprised or worried. Instead, he seemed to be unable to understand why it was my mother-in-law who collapsed and not me. It was as if he was expecting me to collapse. After that, I witnessed an unbelievable truth and was shocked. What was our marriage all about? I was confused and couldn't believe it. Tears flowed naturally, but I clenched my fists and decided to take revenge. My name is Mary Smith, and I'm 58 years old. I find myself wondering when things started to go wrong. These days, I'm exhausted both physically and mentally from thinking about it so much. My husband, Michael, was very kind when we first got married. But over time, he stopped doing things like worrying about me or giving me presents. Even when I prepared gifts for him on his birthday or cooked a special meal for our anniversary, he would often forget. After being married for over 20 years, we've become like air to each other, for better or worse. I wonder if it's pointless to expect anything from him anymore. Even though I try to convince myself otherwise, I can't help but feel like I'm not important to him. It's frustrating and makes me feel uneasy. And since my daughter got married and moved out 5 years ago, my husband hasn't even wished me a happy birthday. At the time, I was getting older, but I still felt lonely in this kind of marriage. Before I knew it, my husband, who works for a wholesale company, is almost 59 years old and nearing retirement. He used to be away from home a lot on business trips, but now he's not going to get promoted anymore, and we'll have more time to spend together. Hey, darling. Do you want to go to a nearby cafe this weekend? I want to take a break because I've been working overtime lately. I work for a food manufacturer, and I haven't seen my husband much lately because of all the overtime I've been doing, but that day we had a rare day off together, so I wanted to spend it with him. However, my husband furrowed his brow and didn't even look up from the newspaper he was reading.
Why do I have to do something like that? Let me be free on my day off.
Well, you know. We haven't talked much as a couple lately, have we? I thought maybe if we went somewhere, we could naturally, start talking. I was stumbling over my words, because I wanted him to understand how lonely I felt. My husband slammed the newspaper down on the table and scowled.
What are you talking about? We're not newlyweds anymore. Think about your age.
But
my colleague Mrs. Williams hasn't gone anywhere with her husband either, and they do everything they need to do through text messages.
I know Mrs. Williams too, and she's a kind and beautiful woman who's much more feminine than I am. She's also 59 years old, just like my husband. My husband often compared me to his colleague and told me to be more like her. Mrs. Williams doesn't talk to her husband either, so it's no wonder we don't talk. I was still lonely, but I had come to accept that my husband might be right. From then on, I tried to think of us as just another married couple and not to think too deeply about it. That was 2 months before my birthday. Time passed, and it was my 58th birthday. I was able to finish work earlier than planned that day and was home before 5 p.m. I'm just going to spend it alone again this year. My husband seemed to be busy with work and came home after midnight every day and went straight to bed. So I couldn't bring myself to say, I want to celebrate my birthday with you. I had prepared a sponge cake for myself and was about to celebrate my birthday alone when my husband suddenly came home with a department store bag.
Mary. Here, this is for you.
When I opened the box he handed me, there was a high-end necklace from a brand I had never worn before inside.
Today's your birthday, right? How is it? Do you like it?
I'm so happy. Thank you. I answered with a big smile, and he scratched his head as if he were trying to hide his embarrassment. He also brought back high-end tea and sweets that were being sold at the event.
I really appreciated you, but I couldn't express my feelings or actions honestly. I want you to think of this as my feelings.
Darling. I had given up on talking to my husband and had become like air to each other. But this surprise made me realize his love for me, and I felt warm inside and out. Then, I noticed tears streaming down my face. I'm so happy.
Try putting it on.
I wiped away my tears, took out the necklace, put it on, and checked the atmosphere in the mirror. My husband looked at me with a smile. It was a moment when I could truly say that I was glad to have married him. However, my husband suddenly took out a suitcase from the closet.
I'm sorry to do this on your birthday, but I have to go on a week-long business trip.
He had to leave immediately after getting ready. As he packed his things, he apologized repeatedly.
I'm sorry, I can't celebrate your birthday properly.
It couldn't be helped if it was work. I saw him off with a smile, even though I was disappointed.
Oh, drink all that tea without me even noticing.
According to the salesperson, it was a special tea that should be consumed within half a day of opening.
Sorry. I opened the package to check the smell at the store. Well, it's time.
He left in a hurry, leaving me alone to savor his kindness. However, I didn't realize that the tragedy had already begun. After Michael left, about 30 minutes later, I took out a teapot from the cupboard and brewed the tea leaves he gave me while they were steaming. Then the doorbell rang.
I came by because I had some business nearby.
My 84-year-old mother-in-law said. She always came to our house like this, but we got along well and always welcomed her. It's a waste to drink this high-end tea alone, so let's have a taste of it too. I prepared a teacup for her and arranged some sweets. Just then, a delivery arrived. Since it was a frozen item, I asked my mother-in-law to please eat first and began to unwrap the package. However, the freezer was packed with items, and it was more difficult than I expected to put them away. I managed to organize the inside of the freezer and tried to sit at the table to drink tea myself. But at that moment, I witnessed an unexpected sight. Oh, Mom! Please hold on! She suddenly started foaming at the mouth and collapsed. She became limp and unresponsive, and her face turned pale and then blue. I'll call an ambulance right away! 15 minutes later, the paramedics arrived and she was rushed to a nearby hospital. I couldn't reach my husband, so I didn't know what to do and could only pray. After the doctors and nurses worked hard to treat her, my mother-in-law survived. It seems that the cause was something she ate or drank that was bad for her body. Even when she regained consciousness during the doctor's treatment, she couldn't think of anything that might have caused it. Fortunately, her condition was good and she was expected to be discharged soon, but she was 84 years old, so she was hospitalized for the day just in case. Oh, hello Michael? I finally got through. We had a hard time here. Actually, Mom was hospitalized because there was something strange in what she ate. I said on the phone while doing the paperwork at the hospital reception. I imagined he would be worried, but what he said was completely different from what I expected.
Why are you fine?
What do you mean? I asked, not understanding what he meant.
If you are okay, that's fine. I'll leave it to you to take care of Mom.
He said so, and then quickly hung up the phone as if he were trying to cover something up. It's like he wanted me to collapse. I thought to myself. But I went to my mother-in-law's hospital room anyway. There, I had a casual conversation with her, and a certain truth was revealed to me. What do you mean? I asked, trying to sort out my thoughts. I began to suspect my husband Michael. I decided to untangle the threads of my thoughts one by one. I knew it. This is the end, I thought, realizing my husband's betrayal and preparing for our separation. But I couldn't just leave it at that. I'll make him suffer just like my mother-in-law did. I was determined to do so. A week later, my husband returned from his week-long business trip. Welcome home. You must be tired. Here, have a drink and take a break. I took his bag at the entrance and took care of him. When I offered him a warm cup, he started drinking it with a slurping sound. How does it taste?
Huh. It's the same as usual tea.
I frowned and peered into his face, which looked normal. That's strange. This is the high-end tea leaves you gave me for my birthday. As soon as he heard my words, he spat out the tea he was drinking and spilled it all over the floor. What did you do? He rushed to the kitchen and drank water or tried to vomit what was in his stomach by sticking his finger in his throat. He seemed to be quite panicked.
I'm going to die like this.
He was sweating and turning pale.
Call an ambulance.
He asked for help, but when I just watched him silently, he tried to contact them himself. Then I took his cell phone away from him.
What are you doing?
Don't worry. It's just ordinary tea I bought earlier, I said, showing him the tea package. He collapsed on the floor, looking helpless. You knew there was something suspicious in the tea leaves, so you panicked like that, I said, peering into his face. He suddenly looked away, and his eyes were clearly shifty.
I don't know anything about that.
What? Don't play dumb. That's why your mother foamed at the mouth and collapsed, I shouted. Just then, the sliding door of the next room opened.
Michael. What are you doing?
My mother-in-law was waiting in the back room. Michael's behavior became more suspicious with the unexpected appearance of his mother.
Mom, it's a misunderstanding. How can you be sure that there was something in the tea? Maybe it was something you ate that day.
I didn't eat or drink anything that day.
Huh.
On that day, the errand nearby was a medical checkup, which took longer than expected. My mother-in-law hadn't eaten anything all day and only drank the tea when she came to our house. Moreover, she only drank a little tea due to her sensitive tongue, so she may have been slightly affected, according to the attending physician. This makes it clear that you tampered with the tea.
But there's no evidence that I put it in.
His mother sighed heavily at her son's attempt to escape.
I saw you carrying a large paper bag with a brand logo from a flower shop on the way to this house.
According to what I heard from my mother-in-law in the hospital room, at that time, she tried to tell him, but he was too busy on the phone and took a taxi without listening to her. His behavior was strange at the time, and she was going to tell me about it later, but she drank the tea and lost consciousness. My husband's complexion worsened and he became more agitated as his mother-in-law pointed out his flaws. I glared at him. I got suspicious and contacted the company. I found out that you had taken paid leave instead of going on a business trip. At this point, I realized that my husband was hiding something from me, so I thoroughly searched his belongings. As a result, I found several women's branded items in the credit card usage history that I don't remember receiving as gifts. Among them was a browsing history that showed what sites he had visited on his computer. I printed out a list of the browsing history. Look here. There are traces of suspicious drug purchases and dark overseas sites all over the browsing history and usage details. I showed Michael browsing history and usage details alternately. And this store matches the payment address on the card. Michael was already pale-faced and couldn't say anything. But that wasn't all I had prepared. You were also looking at love fortune-telling pages a lot. I picked up a crumpled printout of the fortune-telling results from the trash can while searching Michael's room. But maybe the results weren't good and he didn't like them, so he crumpled them up. However, this was the decisive factor that cornered Michael. Let me see. It says, Michael Smith and Nancy Williams's compatibility fortune-telling, right?
Huh.
This is about the Williams, right?
My colleague says that she hasn't gone out with her husband anywhere.
Williams was the woman who Michael mentioned by name when he twisted my words in the past. I asked the flower shop, and they told me that the bouquet Michael purchased had a message card that read, "To my beloved Nancy." In fact, the owner of that flower shop and I knew each other. Michael had shopped there without knowing it. I realized that my husband had some kind of relationship with Nancy Williams. I thought they might have taken a vacation together. So, when I checked with the company, I found out that she also took paid leave for the same period as you.
Did you investigate that far?
You said you were on a business trip, but you were actually on a cheating trip. I'm disgusted. Furthermore, I stormed into her house based on the address written on the Christmas card. David, her husband, suspected his wife's infidelity from trivial things such as her makeup becoming thicker or her coming home late. So, her husband recently put a GPS on her phone. So, he knew your whereabouts like the back of his hand. David had installed this feature on his wife's phone, but he was afraid to see her infidelity and couldn't confirm it easily. However, inspired by me, who confronted my husband's betrayal head-on, he finally made up his mind and we decided to cooperate. Instead of me, who is busy with work, her husband, who has already retired, took pictures of you two at the decisive moment when you were intimate. I scattered numerous photos of their infidelity on the table. They were hugging each other, and there was even a scene where they were trying to enter a hotel. Perhaps, you plan to send me to the afterlife and get compensation and retirement benefits, and spend the second life with your mistress.
Shut up! That's right!
My husband gave up and reluctantly began to tell me about his relationship with her. According to the conversation, Michael and Nancy had a relationship 10 years ago. It was around the same time that he stopped giving me birthday presents. You're really the worst.
I've been putting up with you, an old hag like you, all this time. Be grateful!
Surprisingly, my husband didn't apologize and instead got angry. Furthermore, he arrogantly crossed his legs and leaned back on the sofa. Suddenly, my mother-in-law slapped the back of my husband's head.
I'm ashamed to have a son like you. I'm cutting ties with you.
What? But I'm your only son. Please reconsider.
No discussion. I don't even want to see your face. You're probably counting on my inheritance, but I'll give it all to your wife Mary.
Are you kidding me?
Perhaps he was affected by being abandoned by his biological mother. He has a hint of tears in his eyes.
Mary, listen, I'm sorry. Can't we start over again?
I won't forgive you for betraying me for 10 years. There is no room for sympathy for Michael now, so I clearly rejected him. I'm going to divorce you and demand a lot of compensation.
I confessed and apologized, so isn't that enough?
That's not a good enough story. Besides, Nancy's husband was fuming and threatening to barge into the company.
What?
My husband was speechless for a moment and began to sweat from his forehead.
Hey, if he does that, I won't be able to stay at the company, and I won't get full retirement benefits even though I'm about to retire soon. Please tell him to stop now.
When I shook my head silently, my husband looked hopeless. So I decided to corner him further. By the way, I tried fortune-telling Michael on the internet and it said the biggest crisis in life. It's surprisingly accurate. I'll try it next time.
I'm sorry. Please forgive me.
My husband finally apologized profusely and began to cling to me many times. I thought I was going to die and go to the afterlife because of you.
That's why I'm apologizing.
I'm going to consult a lawyer about this matter, including this one, and take appropriate action. I'm also considering filing a complaint with the police, so be prepared.
No way.
No matter how much he begged, he finally realized that my determination would not change, and he broke down in tears and snot on the spot. My mother-in-law and I looked down on him with cold eyes. Afterwards, Michael and I divorced. The police report was cancelled in deference to my mother-in-law. I received $20,000 in compensation from my ex-husband and $7,000 from his mistress Nancy. David, Nancy's husband, stormed into the company as he had promised, and the relationship between Michael and Nancy spread like wildfire. They couldn't bear it and resigned immediately. They are still struggling to pay compensation to David, who is demanding it, and they have not yet decided on their next job. Since then, Michael and Nancy's relationship has been strained and they are leading lonely lives. On the other hand, I was approached by the personnel department to extend my employment. I can now work after retirement, which is a relief. And my daughter and son-in-law had a child, so I'm looking forward to everyone coming to visit on weekends, which is my greatest pleasure right now.
How was this story? Please subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next video.